right, hello and welcome to another Expert Insight interview. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP, online sales magazine, and Pipeliner CRM. Joining you as usual from a sunny San Diego, actually lovely day today. And I'm delighted to be joined by Tim Rexius, who is up in lovely Omaha, Nebraska. Probably a little bit different up there, right, Tim?
Definitely not nearly as nice a weather as you have, I can guarantee.
But a beautiful part of the world. And Tim is a self-made serial entrepreneur who embodies the triumph of grit over privilege, starting from sleeping in your car and surviving on heated ketchup packets. He's built 4 companies, including the thriving Omaha Protein Popcorn Company, and you built that into an international brand, 6,000 retailers in 13 countries. Wow. Without any outside investment. And with over 20 years in health, nutrition, international sales, and retail, you deliver keynotes, inspire students, entrepreneurs, and leaders, balancing business success, the happy marriage, and 6 kids. I grew up in a family of 5, so believe you me, you have, wow, I'm impressed. And that's what we're going to talk about today. First of all, I did talk about 2 different things, but how building a multi-million-dollar business with and a brand with 0 investors. I mean, you started with nothing, like no inherited wealth, no investors, nobody giving you a dig out. So why did you decide? Was it circumstances, or did you decide you were going to bootstrap?
Well, I think we own 5 companies, and we have some investors now in different operations, but I always looked at it from the advantageous position that if I can't make it work on some level with the money that I have, why should anybody trust me with theirs? Mm-hmm. And so I need to prove the concept. I think so many people jump into business, they bring on investors, especially in today's society. I think a lot of the younger entrepreneurs are able to crowdfund and do things well before they're prepared to actually deal with the infrastructure itself. So my challenge, like with Omaha Protein Popcorn first, was like, okay, let's perfect the product. And a lot of mistakes were made. It was made on my money. So the only one I had to look, be responsible to, other than my wife, was me in the mirror being like, God, that was stupid. But then it makes you perfect it, a little more sense of urgency, I think, with your own money, rounds and rounds about packaging and boxing and infrastructure and supply chain management. What does that look like? Have we perfected the size and the look and just everything about that? The point that when I do bring on an investor into a project, whatever it might be, I've already made all the mistakes with my cash.
Right.
And that for them gives them a lot more security in what we're doing. There's not going to be a lot of fumbling around with, let's say I ask you to invest, there's going to be a lot of fumbling with your cash. Your cash now allows a perfected process to scale beyond what is the normal processes. So for me, it's because people ask me to invest in stuff all the time. And when I look at it, with my level of expertise, at this point, I'm like, you're going to screw up 80% of this money just because that's what we do in business. What we think in our own realm, this is the perfect package, this is the perfect size, doesn't translate to, soccer mom Karen and baseball dad Bill, because we're in a different, a different environment, especially us as seasoned salespeople. Is we look through a different lens, don't we? I mean, we really do, because we're so impacted by what we do every day.
Yeah, and it's a great point you said about perfecting getting the product right first. I mean, it's kind of what we did with Pipeliner, is we invested all our time and energy into the product. But also what you said there about, it's quite easy to get investment if you want it. So, you can get investment, but I think people don't always understand is, I mean, the investors are gamblers, right? A lot of the times, they're investing in a bunch of things. So, and especially if you go VC, you're in a fund, and as long as one works out, they're fine. You don't have to, it's not necessarily going to be your one. But I think it definitely, and people do fall into that trap of like, here's a load of money, just dump it all into marketing, dump it into build a huge sales organization, and away you go. And that model doesn't work for a lot of people.
No, and I think a lot of people go to marketing too soon. I mean, what people understand is that we were in a dozen countries before I ever ran an ad for Omaha Protein Popcorn. I mean, not even one single ad in anything. I mean, I spent the vast majority of the first, 2 decades of my professional career. That makes me sound old. I don't like that, but it's true. Developing relationships, because I was in business before the internet was really a thing. And, and back then, even to now, your ability to cultivate relationships and maintain that and make your story heard is everything. And I see a lot of younger brands jump into marketing before they have the infrastructure in place and supply chain management to be able to even deal with success. So let's perfect that first. Let's start small. Let's see what works. Let's test theories. Let's see what velocity looks like in different sales channels before we start dumping copious amounts of money into a product. And then what happens if you have to change your formula? Let's say if you change your packaging because the shelf life didn't work out correctly. Now you're going to spend a boatload of money in marketing trying to tell everybody, hey, we screwed up. Please forgive us. Give us a chance. Why don't we just make those mistakes on a smaller scale? And then when it's go time, go ahead and throw the fuel on the fire and see what we can do. And that's just how I look at it, because I try to treat everything I do as this is my personal money.
Yeah.
How would I cultivate that? How would I use it to its best? And when you do start out poor, which I didn't have a lot of money. So every dollar I spent, you better believe that I thought that through, because there was no trust fund behind it.
Yeah.
Didn't win the lottery. Lord knows I play every week, but I haven't won yet. So I better make sure I use it all at 100% efficiency.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think those experiences, like, I can absolutely relate in many ways. Those experiences really shape you, especially when you don't come from, you don't have any safety nets behind you like that. But tell me, what was it? How did you generate your first revenue, and was it difficult to continue to reinvest it? Like, because obviously, like, when you get some revenue, maybe you were like, oh, maybe I'll take a little bit out, maybe I do this, maybe I do that, but you needed to scale, right?
So extreme. Like when I heard the first company was Rexius Nutrition Stores, where I kind of used that, and I used that to elevate and make parallel lines of investment and income. But I started with the first store. No, I had to go broke. I went from making in 2009. Working in out of Washington, D.C., I was making pretty good money for me at the time, which, I was probably grossing around $300K a year. And to go from homeless at 19 to that, brother, it's hard to go from that nice house and
to
pay myself $15 an hour in a store. And so we rented. I sold the house. We lived poor. Like there was a lot of days that I just didn't have. There was much more month than there was left at the end of the paycheck. And it's hard not to go spend it, but I was addicted to the process of building to make sure that I never had to be in that position again. So I was, probably too much so. It was at one point in 2016, with 6 years in the process, where we have stores in 5 or 6 states. This is right before we started our chain of gyms and before we started the popcorn company, where my wife was great at this. She's like, hey, we're not poor. I know. But I've just got that ingrained in my DNA. She goes, you drive the oldest car in the company. We have 100 employees. Half of them are high school to 20-year-olds, and they all drive newer rides than you. I'm like, okay, she's not wrong. I'm driving a beater, and I am. And we're living in at that time we had 5 kids, so we had 7 of us living in a 3-bedroom house.
Yep. Hey, I can relate, by the way, from growing up home in Ireland.
And finally, we're like, okay, let's go buy a bigger house. I will get a new car. And, and it's nice having that support at home, being like, hey, she's like, I'm here with your crazy, and I'm here to do this with you, but it's okay to have some nice things. And I think I got into that mode so hard for so long, I wouldn't let myself spend money on anything. And it was almost like a point of pride to drive the oldest car. But then our oldest daughter wrecked her car, so she got my old beater, and I finally got to get something new. And then, every once in a while I'm like, am I too comfortable? Because I think a lot of serial entrepreneurs who are used to bootstrapping and all of a sudden you kind of look back and like, I'm driving a nice car and my house is nice. Am I spending too much? And I'll just pull back the reins a little bit and
Well, I think especially, I mean, given like, as you said, your background and stuff, sometimes it's hard, our backgrounds, it's hard to sometimes like be comfortable with success almost.
Well, it is. And I think that, and it came around full circle because, in 2017, we launched our first fitness center, and now we have 3 of them. So we're scaling that up like crazy. And we started the popcorn company, but it was underneath a different brand name. And this is why it was good. It was my money, because that brand name did not work, and the packaging did not work, and the boxes did not work. And so I knew the product was good. I just didn't have everything else in infrastructure. And then what happened in 2020? Lockdowns.
Yep.
Right. And then I realized at that point, what I thought I knew, I didn't know. I was too extended. I had gotten to that point. So that made me dial everything kind of back in and refocus. Okay, what are we spending money on that's not essential? Like where's it all going? And it makes you kind of sit back down again and be like, okay, with the way the economy was for the better part of 20 some years, I was becoming an expert, but all of a sudden you never thought things would be locked down.
Yeah.
How do I pivot here? Which are my businesses set up for online? Because I was never an e-com guy. It was just
right.
Yeah. And all of a sudden I'm like, hey, my customers can't come in the store. We better become e-com people real fast. And it really did help us sharpen. So, every lesson is a lesson that sharpens your acumen. And that's what it did, and made me pivot some of the brands, and made me relook at some things where I'm like, okay, the popcorn did well because we were in nutrition stores and gyms because of my relationship building capability. Yep. But when people aren't going to nutrition stores and gyms, we realize our packaging is kind of ugly. The name didn't make sense for people buying it on a website.
Gotcha.
So let's pivot. So we repivoted that in 22, and in 23 relaunched, and we're up 16,000% since then, because of what we learned at that point in time when the circumstances changed. And so,
interesting lesson, isn't it? But also it's an interesting reminder that even when you are being successful and things are going well, that you have to go back and check yourself sometimes, and check that you're not, that you're not letting things get inefficient, that you're not bleeding cash unnecessarily, that you're not getting complacent.
Oh, 100%. And then too, it's you step outside of your realm a little bit and become a student. And that, I think when we have success in business, especially if there's multiple businesses, our egos, I'm not outside of this realm. My ego got the better of me. I'm like, I know what I'm doing. I didn't. And I had to sit back and look at it like we do as a student again. Okay, let me study. I have 6 kids. I have a great test plot at my house, ranging 20 years in age difference, and 3 boys and 3 girls. And I started looking, okay, if I want to do more direct to consumer, I want to make my website business better, who in this house buys the most stuff? My 3 daughters. You think a credit card limit is a challenge. The amount of packages that come from TikTok and Instagram and Amazon, I'm like, these girls spend money. So they redesigned the bags. They got the color scheme. They designed the mascot, because they are the ones who are susceptible to this online marketing more than anyone else. And so the same habits I complained about as dad, as CEO, I was like, yeah, okay, let's use that. Let's use that evil for good, and let me get some of that money back. And just because I became a student again, and now when I launch new flavors of, say, the Omaha Protein Popcorn Company, I'm not seeing what I like. I'm seeing what my kids are doing. What's the snack? Chips. I don't ask questions. I just watch.
You have your own permanent focus group going on there.
Exactly. And if I can't get, here's my thing. I said this at a conference last week, the couple thousand grocery chains. We were at the NGA, and they asked me, like, well, how'd you settle on this flavor? I said, all 6 of my kids had to agree. And I think if you can get 6 kids to agree on anything, it's worth millions. And so every grocery chain was good enough for me. Let's get it. They know. And so, I looked at everyone more like an asset than a liability.
And tell me a bit about what were some of the challenges or the experience of expanding internationally?
Oh, I'm gonna be a little different on that one. It's challenging because of what we allow here in the United States as far as ingredients, and the way we classify things, the way we're required to label things is very different in other countries. Good for me is I created this snack for me and my family. So I wanted the highest quality I could possibly put in a product, because I'm trying to trick a 6-year-old into eating protein that doesn't come in the form of a chicken nugget or chocolate milk. So it's like negotiating with the terrorists with that kid. So I just, you can't know it's healthy. And so because of that, I'm one of the very few snacks from the United States allowed in many countries in the Middle East, because we meet health claims. So it was very tough navigating the Ministry of Health in different countries, in what are the labeling guidelines. And there are a lot of programs here in the United States that help with that, but it was challenging from that aspect. But from a scaling aspect, it was actually wonderful because in the United States, for instance, when you're going to a big major super chain, for instance, there's going to be 60 employees who you have to get through to get to the actual decision maker. And the problem is in the United States, we change jobs like most people change their shoes.
Yeah, yeah. And it's increasing, by the way. The job tenure is going down rapidly.
But in other countries, it's not such the case. A lot of people work in the same job for 40 years. They work at the same job that their father did 40 years before them. And so the great thing is with technology, like you and I are Zooming, or doing a podcast right now, allows me to get that face-to-face interaction without having to travel. Now, I do travel a lot, but I get to talk to an owner. We get to come to a deal, we make a decision, and it's done. So for me, I like it a lot better. And two, from a financial standpoint, doing international business from a U.S. company is actually kind of great when you're trying to scale, because almost every one of those brands understands that they have to prepay before it leaves the U.S. So I don't have that revolving terms waiting on an aging accounts receivable, which as a scaling brand is hard, because if you're waiting on a 90-day accounts receivable, but you got to rebuy raw materials, that's where the capital infusion has to come. We're trying to scale initially from bootstrapping point of view is, if I have a country order $100,000 worth of goods, when I'm done completing manufacturing that good and it's ready to ship, I get the 100,000 before it leaves. So it allows a scaling brand actually more opportunity and advancement than doing it just straight here in the U.S. So the simple fact is, we were in a dozen countries before I ever even tried to market here in the U.S.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and it's a really important point there that you made, because I think this is something that, as people start businesses, that they sometimes underestimate, and that's to ensure that they have the capital and the cash flow to see them through. Because, like you said, you can, you're selling a product or a service, and you can say, "Oh, it's great. Look at the revenue I made this month," but it's all sitting in accounts receivable, and you're a small player, and guess what, big companies take advantage of small players, and suddenly you're the last one to get paid.
I can tell you right now, we're doing business with so many different, and we've scaled so large here in the United States the last 12 months. I think we've launched into 20,000 C stores. Now we're launching into grocery and big major chains, and I'm not going to name any of them so they don't get mad at me, but they're the worst at paying bills. And just finding out who do I talk to at accounts payable, and nobody knows anybody. And it's, the small mom and pops, I can call them, we get it handled, it's done. Trying to even find the person who makes the decision can take 60 to 90 days, and you can't charge them interest. I heard one person say, "Well, just charge them interest when they're late." You can't charge interest on a bill.
Try that one.
Otherwise you're done. Like, you don't get to make the rules. And so it is challenging and aggravating at the same time, but it's part of playing the game.
And having that, and I think sometimes people underestimate the runway they need, and it's just always been my experience that that things always take a little bit longer than you would like them to, and sometimes it's difficult not to be super optimistic and kind of like, as I said, not have your runway long enough for you to be able to survive these challenges.
Oh, and I have an expression I've always used when I use my sales guys, my brokers. I'm like, be impatiently patient. They go, "That's an oxymoron." I go, "It is," but impatient enough to always keep driving, but patient enough to understand that if it was easy, you'd have 10,000 more competitors. So it's being impatiently patient.
Yeah, absolutely. And how much is your personal story have you infused into this, and how much has helped you grow your business?
Every last aspect of my personal journey is told in every single aspect. Because at the end of the day, if you really want to build brand, you have to build yourself as much as the brand you're selling. And it's the story behind it. That's what makes people attached to it. And makes people get into the feels, right? They start to feel emotionally attached to the brand. And that's how we build loyalty that these bigger corporations just can't ever get. And so being the smaller guy or being the medium-sized company, we have an ability to scale significantly faster because we are able to be part of the brand story. So when I do these conventions, that's why I do so many of these shows with my staff, is to tell the story. And I've told the story about how I created the popcorn probably 50,000 times at this point, but people start to attract to it. I've got kids. Oh, my grandson's like that, or whatever. And that builds brand, and it builds loyalty. And that's how I started my first company. Like when I started Rexius Nutrition Stores, I didn't have any money. I had enough money to stock the store. I had no marketing dollars, but what I did have was the ability to make people like me and be very chatty. So I went to 3 different gyms every day for 3 years. Before and after work, I would go work out. One, I got in phenomenally great shape.
I was going to say,
I got really good shape. And two, I got to meet every single person who worked out at any gym, anywhere in the metro of 1.2 million people, that I made them like me. They came in and saw me, and that was it. And it built an empire that allowed me to build 4 other companies off of it, just because I went and did the guerrilla marketing. I went and did the work. And I think in some aspects, I'm so grateful that I was as broke as I was, because it forced that as being the only option, and realizing that I have options now. I have money. I can market it all I want. But let's take what I did in person 20 years ago and let's put it on video and let's market it.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can attract. And that's where the value of doing podcasting stuff like this is so huge, because you get to have people attached, be like, hey, I have commonality with this guy. Hey, I was broke too. And for me, it's a hope thing.
Yeah.
The amount of young entrepreneurs, or not even young, just people who are new in business that are struggling, and being able to be that piece of hope for them because they heard your story. I mean, that's everything.
Yeah, no, I think it is. And especially because you're right, it's not even young entrepreneurs. Like, we live in a world today where I think a lot more people are looking to, I want to be my own boss. I want to go out on my own, or I want to be able to live where I want. I want to be able to, construct a job. So I think there's more and more people coming into this. And I think stories like yours, and understanding that at the end of the day, the dedication, the grit, and the hard work. Because I tell you, Tim, it's the one thing I always say to people is you can teach people everything except hard work.
Yeah. And that's just it. I think I speak, so I purposely volunteer. I do anywhere from 10 to 30 times in a year. I'll speak at local high schools or universities. I mean, not even local, just anywhere in the U.S. Asked a lot. And everybody else said, why do you do that? I said twofold. One, when you get to see that those couple kids in the class that were basically you 30, 40 years ago, right? And so one, you get to do that. Two, it reinvigorates me and reminds me why I started this, all the things. And two, I explain to kids, I go, you guys are at a disadvantage because you actually believe half the garbage you see on social media. All these overnight millionaires, they go, yeah, they don't exist. I've been everywhere. I've met millionaires. I've met billionaires. Never met a single one of them that didn't work their face off to get to where they are.
Yeah.
Have a story. And so for me, when I meet a lot of these guys, and I've done some of the top podcasts in the world, and I get to hear people's stories, and it's the story, it's obviously always different, but the foundation's the same. I was sick of being broke. I was sick of being a number on a page. I had no other choice. So I tell everyone that works for me, pretend like you're in my position 20 years ago. And if this stuff doesn't sell, you can't eat.
Yeah.
And if they don't come back a second time, then you're in the same boat the next month. So it's, how do you approach a customer? How do you approach a member or a client, and understand that without this person, I have to go back to sacking groceries and being bottom of the list? It changes your approach to everything. So I try to help everyone embody and understand that. And so when I speak at high schools and I speak to my staff, I have a picture of the 1983 Oldsmobile I slept in for 6 months when I didn't have a home. And that reminds me, every time I get a little high-fangled, I go back and look at that picture and be like, now, granted, back then, guys, cars were 38 feet long. It was like a car. They built them different back then. But I remember that, and I never was able to shake that. And I'm glad. I'm grateful for that experience above all. Remind me that, I got to bet on me, because nobody else is going to if I'm not going to.
Fantastic. What a great way to end. I love that. Just repeat that again. Bet on yourself, because let's face it, nobody else might want to bet on you. And you're also going to, if you bet on yourself, you're going to make sure that the bet is a good one.
It's my kids. My kids make fun of me for this. Why? We put up posts on social media. I've got obviously an assistant that does a lot of social media stuff for me. And they made a comment. They've done this 100 times, and now my kids think it's funny, but it's true. They go, why are you always the first one to heart or like your own post? And they said, they go, such a dorky thing. I go, you guys, you think I'm just saying this stuff to hear myself talk? If you're not a fan of you, how do you expect anyone else to be? Well, if you don't bet on you, how is anybody else going to be confident to bet on you? And I said, I take that from every aspect of my life. Yeah. That I put it all on the table. And I'm willing to do this. And so, like, we bring on investors, we bring it back to that same thing. Like, I already bet on me and my ability to do this. I made the mistakes here. You have full confidence in my ability because I bet on me first.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that as well. It's like, if you're not prepared to bet on yourself, it's like I say to people, sometimes people go, oh, my company isn't investing in me, into my training or in everything. And I say, invest in yourself. Don't wait around for companies to do it. Nobody's going to care as much about your career as you are.
Oh no, and I've said this 100 times, and people ask this all the time, like, "Oh, you're such a cool boss," because every partner I have in a lot of the businesses I now co-own with different people are former employees.
Mm.
And I look at job employment as a long-term future business partner interview. But I've said this 100 times. I said, trust me, you're underestimating your boss's knowledge and his ability. If you go above and beyond for whatever job you're in, and you're investing in yourself, and you're going above and beyond your job title to bring the absolute best, trust me, as an owner, we see it.
Yeah.
And we will lock it down. We'll make up and invent an opportunity to keep talent and work ethic like that inside our fold.
Yeah.
And so give everything 110% and see what happens. Trust me, nothing but good happens.
Excellent. Perfect. Well, listen, Tim, thank you so much. All of Tim's information will be below this video. But before we go, please do remind people about you and what you do.
Yeah, timrexius.com is the best place to see. You can see all the businesses we own: Rexius Nutrition Stores, Iron Heaven Gyms, VHI Nutraceuticals, Omaha Protein Popcorn, and the Timothy D. Rexius Business Coaching and keynote speaking. And, drop us a line, click one of the companies. We appreciate everyone's support. And if I can help you in any which way, shape, or form, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'll do my best.
Fantastic. Well, listen, thanks again, Tim. Thank you for watching and listening. See you all again very soon.